Okay, welcome back to another fun-filled math lecture. So, if any of you have ever had fun multiplying or adding or subtracting polynomials together, well then how about you go ahead and try multiplying polynomials together. Here we are going to look at two different types of problems. The first is multiplying a polynomial when you're multiplying with a monomial, meaning a single term kind of a funny sentence, threw me for a second. The second thing we're going to look at is how to multiply polynomials if you have a binomial or greater. Now, in both ideas, we are essentially using the main idea behind the distributing property, which says whatever's on the outside you have to move or take into your parenthesis and then simplify from there. Okay? Now, the other thing that you have to keep in mind when you're working with polynomials is you may have to use exponential rules. For example, if you are multiplying two exponent terms together, that rule says you have to add the exponents. So do not forget your exponential rules when doing these. Now, if you're someone who's sitting there going, oh crap, I don't remember those rules, look back at a previous lecture where we were talking specifically at exponential rules, exponential powers, and refreshing those exponential skills. Okay? Alright, so here, let's go ahead and do just a couple examples where we are going to multiply a polynomial using a single term on the outside. Okay? So this first one says, I have negative 3x and I want to multiply that into the polynomial x squared plus 3x minus 8. So that says we have to take this whole thing on the outside here and we have to apply it to all three pieces. That's called the distributive property. We're distributing it through. So this becomes negative 3x times the x squared. And then I have negative 3x times a 3x. And I have my negative 3x times negative 8. So here I have negative 3x times x squared. So my negative 3 is going to carry through. My x carries through, and here I have the power of 1 and the power of 2, so this becomes 1 plus 2. Remember, if you multiply your terms together, you have to add your powers. Now here I've got a negative 3 times 3, so this becomes negative 9, and then this is x to the 1 plus 1. And then here I have negative and negative, which is positive. 3 times 8 gives me 24, and I have x. The very last thing we have to do is finish our exponential math. So this becomes negative 3x cubed minus 9x squared plus a 24x. Now here's a big piece of advice that I can give you. Notice the polynomial I started with here only had an x squared. When you multiply it, you should expect that your polynomial gets bigger. When multiplying it with the variable, you should expect that your power is going to get bigger. If you do this multiplication and your power gets smaller, I promise you've made a mistake. Just go back, double check your work, and make sure that you didn't drop a sign somewhere. Let's look at another one. Now this one is kind of fun. Notice here I've got this 5x squared thing going on. So again, I have to distribute it into all aspects of my parentheses. But in this case, my power on the outside is a 2. So here, again, this is going to be the 5x squared times my first term, negative 4x squared. And then I have the 5x squared, and I'm going to multiply that second term, which is a 2x. And then I have that 5x squared, and I'm going to multiply it by the third term, which is a negative 1. So, doing the first terms, 5 times a negative 4 gives me a negative 20. My x comes along, but the top becomes 2 plus 2. 5 times 2 gives me a positive 10. X comes along and it is 2 plus 1. 5 times negative 1 is a negative 5, and then my x squared comes along. Last thing I need to do is my exponents. So this is negative 20 x to the 4th plus 10 x to the 3rd minus 5 x squared. Pretty cool, huh? At least I think so. Alright, in looking at this next one, or these next couple, notice we're going to have to do a little bit, basically do what we were just doing, but more than once. So here I have this x on the outside. I have to distribute it through just this first parenthesis and then stop. I then have a completely different term. So here I've got this negative 7 piece, and that will be distributed through the back. Okay, so the rule of thumb I like to use is this: when the parenthesis closes, I'm done distributing. So here, this first term is going to be x times my 3x, and my x times the 4, and then I have to do the back term. So this is going to be my negative 7 times the 2x, and my negative 7 times negative 7. Now again, do my multiplication. So x times a 3x is going to give me 3x, and then I had 1 plus 1. I'm going to add this. X times 4 is going to give me a 4x. Negative 7 times 2 is a negative 14x. Negative 7 times 7 is a positive 49. Now I have to do my exponent, so this becomes a 3x squared. And then the other thing that I can notice here is I have a 4x and a negative 14x, which can combine, gives us a negative 10x plus 49. Alright, let's do this again. So here I've got this 4x out in front, so again it needs to come through my parentheses here. Once my parenthesis closes, I stop. And then I have a new term, so this 3 has to go through the back. Again, once I get to the very end, I stop. So here, this is going to give me 4x times my x squared plus my 4x times the negative x plus my 4x times the 1. And then I have to do this back part, so then I'm going to have a plus, apologize for running out of room. So this is going to be plus a 3, and then it's x squared, plus a 3 times the negative 4x, plus 3 times my 7. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. This first term is 4x times x squared. So this is going to be 4x to the 1 plus 2. I then have 4x and negative x. So this becomes a negative 4x to the 1 plus 1. 4x times 1 is going to give me a positive 4x, and keep going. Here I have a plus 3x squared. My next term is a negative 12x, and I follow it up with a positive 21. I need to add my terms, my exponents together. So 1 plus 2, this makes this a 4x cubed. I have minus 4x squared plus my 4x plus my 3x squared minus the 12x plus the 21. I need to combine my terms. So I've got this x squared terms that can combine, and I have these x terms that can combine. Nothing else can. So this is going to be 4x cubed. I have negative 4 plus 3 is going to give me a negative x squared. 4 minus 12 is a negative 8x plus 21. And this would be the polynomial I wanted. Now all 4 of these examples used a single term on the outside when multiplying them together. Well, let's look at what happens if we have multiple terms together. Okay. So we're going to use the distributive property in order to multiply these terms together. And I'm going to show you exactly how this works using what's just the distributive property. Now, keep in mind there are many ways to be able to attack this. This is just one such method. So, the distributive property says you're going to take my outside binomial. You're going to take your first term and you're going to multiply it by the first term and by the second term. You are then going to take your second term here and multiply it by the first term and it by that second term. So let's go ahead and do that distributing. So we're going to have my 7x times the first term here, so times the 2x. I then am going to take my 7x and times that last term, which is a 5. I'm now going to take my negative 9 and multiply it by the 2x. I then have to take my negative 9 and multiply it by the 5. I have distributed both terms through the back parentheses, so now I just have to combine and simplify. 7 times 2 gives me a 14. X and x gives me x to the 1 plus 1. I have 7 times 5, which is 35x. Negative 9 times 2 is a negative 18x. And negative 9 times 5 is a negative 45. I can do my power and I can combine my two terms. So here this becomes 14x squared plus 17x minus 45. Alright, let's do it again. I'm going to take again my first term and I'm going to distribute it through the parentheses here. So to do that, again says I'm going to take my x and multiply it by x. I'm then going to take that x and multiply it by the 3. I now have to take my back term and multiply it through. So I'm going to take my negative 6 and multiply it by x, and I'm going to take that negative 6 and multiply it by 3. So here x and x is going to give me x squared. X and 3 is going to give me a positive 3x, negative 6x, and then negative 18. I need to combine my terms, so this becomes x squared minus a 3x minus 18. Alright, let's kick things up a little bit. Here I've got a term on the outside and then two binomials. There's a couple ways that you can attack this. First, and the way that I would do it would be to combine your binomials together first and then distribute the 4. That being said, you could distribute your 4 through your first binomial and then combine them together. you will end up with the same result at the end. Okay. So let me show you what it looks like to distribute your binomials first and then worry about the 4 on the end. So it says that we're going to start with our first term and we are going to distribute it through. So we're going to have this negative 4 and we're going to open a bracket. We're going to have x times x, so x is times the x, and then we're going to have x times the negative 7. We then have to take the 6 and we're going to distribute that through. So we're going to have my 6 times the x and my 6 times the negative 7 and close your bracket. That negative 4 is going to remain on the outside for now. X times x is going to give me x squared. X times negative 7, so I have a negative 7x plus a 6x minus 42. I need to combine my middle terms here. So I've got this negative 4 is still times x squared minus x minus 42. Now I can go ahead and take this negative 4 and I can distribute it through my parentheses to get my final result. So here we're going to end up with a negative 4x squared plus a 4x plus 168. Alright, let's look at this next one. Notice I have a binomial on the outside and a trinomial on the inside, but the root is going to be the same. You're going to take your first term and you are going to distribute it through your parenthesis. And then you're going to take your second term and then do the same thing. Distribute it through your parenthesis here. So we're going to have my 2x times the x squared. We're going to take that 2x times the negative 7x. And we're going to take that 2x times the 2. Then we're going to take the 1 times the x squared. We're going to take 1 times the negative 7x. And we're going to take the 1 times 2. So let's look at the first term here. So we have 2x and x squared is going to give me a 2x cubed. Remember, we have to add. There's 2x's here, 1x here. Combine them gives you 3. I have a 2 times negative 7 is a negative 14. X and x gives me x squared. And then I have plus 4x. Moving right along, 1 times x squared is going to give me plus x squared minus my 7x plus 2. I need to combine terms. Here is x squared, here is x, here is an x, and here is an x. So what we end up with is a 2x cubed minus 13x squared minus a 3x plus 2. Alright, let's get a little fun. Well, I guess I should say, I find it to be fun. You might find it to be annoying. That's okay. We'll call it even. This term right here, oops, the square right here means I'm going to multiply the trinomial twice. Okay, that's what it means. It means I'm multiplying it twice. So, that says we have n squared plus 3n minus 2, and we are going to multiply that by an n squared plus 3n minus 2. So what we have to do is just the same as before. We're going to take the first term and we are going to come into this parenthesis. So to do that says I'm going to take my n squared times an n squared. I'm then taking my n squared times my 3n. I'm taking my n squared times the negative 2. That's the first part. I then have to take the 3n, and it also is going to go to all 3 pieces. So this is going to be my 3n times the n squared plus the 3n times your 3n plus that 3n times the negative 2. But hold up. We're not done yet, because we have to do it again. The negative 2 goes to the first part, goes to the second part, and goes to the third part. So here, now we're going to have the negative 2 times the n squared minus my 2 times that 3n minus my 2 times the negative 2. Whew! Now everything is just the same. Combining your terms and simplifying it down. So I have n squared times n squared. So this is going to be n to the 2 plus 2. I then have n squared times 3n, so this is plus 3n to the 2 plus 1. N squared and negative 2 gives me a negative 2n squared. Come to the next one. 3n and n squared gives me a plus 3n to the 1 plus 2. 3n and 3n gives me a plus 9n to the 1 plus 1. And then 3n and negative 2 is a negative 6n. Last but not least, I have negative 2n squared. I have a negative 6n and a positive 4. Alright, let's start working on reducing. So 2 plus 2, this is going to give me n to the 4th, plus 3n cubed, minus 2n squared, plus 3n cubed, plus 9n squared, minus 6n, minus 2n squared, minus the 6n, plus 4. Now we need to combine our terms. So I have an n cubed and an n cubed. I have an n squared, an n squared, and an n squared. I have a 6n and a 6n, and then everything else is left alone. So here this becomes n to the 4th. 3 plus 3 is going to give you plus 6n cubed. Negative 2 plus 9 minus 2 is going to give you plus 5n squared. Negative 6 minus 6 is a minus 12n plus 4. And this is my overall result. right. This last one I have here, I have as a way for you to be able to check yourself. Let's see what you know. Let's see what you've picked up and what questions you may end up having. Your solution here should come out to being x squared plus 14x minus 2. I challenge you to try it on your own and see if you can figure it out. I will give you a hint. Do not forget you have this negative sign or subtraction sign between them. The other hint I'll give you is you need to run these two parentheses in front separate from the two in the back. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture talking about multiplying these polynomials together. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you try out this example and you want to see the actual steps, let me know and I will be more than happy to send them to you. Otherwise, enjoy yourself, have fun, be creative, try something new, and I will see you next time.